In this video, we are looking at page 15 in the textbook. And I took the opportunity before the video to look up these names because I wasn't sure how to pronounce them. Cheechako is the gecko. Canchel is an animal that looks sort of like a deer. So this is a fiction story. This is not a true story. It is a folk story because it's talking about a moral. There's a moral to the story. There's a reason for the story. It's like Americans would call this a fable. And this is an Indonesian story. That's why I had some trouble with the names. I'm not familiar with the structure of the language there. So I just looked up on Google how to pronounce Cheechako and Canchel. And I had to listen a few times, but I think it's close enough. It may not be perfect. Okay, it says to read the paragraph, then answer the questions. Question. People in Indonesia tell stories about Cheechako and Canchel. Cheechako is a gecko. Canchel is a deer-like animal that is about the size of a dog. Cheechako and Canchel argue constantly. Sometimes they insult each other. In one story, they argue because each one thinks it can run faster than the other one can. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward cause and effect. One of the clues that I would look for is because. That's a big indicator that we have a cause and effect story. I want to go ahead this time and look at the question, and then I'm going to go back and show you how to break it down. What is the cause of the argument between Cheechako and Canchel? Cause is another clue of this text structure. Is it because Cheechako is a gecko? Is it because Canchel is a deer-like animal? Is it because they are insulting one another? Or is it because each animal thinks it can run faster? What are they arguing about? So if you look back at this passage, I would look for the word because. Each one thinks it can run faster than the other one can. And there's the answer to your question. And I know they told me the answer here. But I wanted to show you my thinking and why that answer is true. Look for those keywords, and that will help you. But I want to break this passage down because remember, my job is to teach you how to read better. I know you can read, but how to comprehend what you read. So I'm going to use this cause-effect diagram again because I know that's my structure based on those words. And this time I'm not going to draw the bones in until I need them because I don't want to end up with too many of my fish bones. So the first sentence, the first detail is that people in Indonesia tell stories about Cheechako and Canchel. So I'm going to put in a fishbone and put that detail in that fishbone. These are Indonesian characters. And this is fiction. Stories are fiction. They're not true. Lots of cultures have these stories about characters, and the stories, there are lots and lots of stories about the same characters. So these particular characters come from Indonesia. Okay, there's really not a sequence in this one, but you can still use the bone structure to make these. So there's my second bone. And again, you can add as many bones as you need. This is your drawing. Cheechak is a gecko. Kenchel is a deer-like animal that is about the size of a dog. So I'm going to put that in here. Cheechak is a gecko. He's like that little lizard on the Geico commercials. There's also a picture of him down there at the bottom of the page. Kenchel is deer-like, about the size of a dog. I'm not going to put all that in there, but we need to at least get an idea of what these characters look like. Remember, we're reading to comprehend, so we're getting a mental image. Okay, here comes another detail that's very important. Cheechak and Kenchel argue all the time. So evidently all of the stories about these creatures are arguments. They're having arguments about everyday things. And I'm just going to say they, meaning Cheechak and Kenchel, argue all the time. That's the same, remember I'm paraphrasing. Constantly means all the time. I would like to read some more of these stories. I bet they're good stories. Sometimes they insult each other. So instead of saying sometimes, I'm just going to say they may insult each other. And this fish looks a little peculiar, but that's okay. I'm not doing this to sell a portrait. I'm doing this just to make notes. Okay. In one story, they argue because each one thinks it can run faster than the other one can. So I'm going to say one argument. Each thinks he can run faster than the other. Okay, and that's sort of where this whole paragraph is pointing me. It's toward this idea that one of the creatures thinks he can run faster than the other. But I need this background information to understand this. If you said that, if you just walk up to me and say, Cheechak and Kenchel had an argument because one thinks he can run faster than the other, I would not have a clue what you're talking about. But if you give me this background information and tell me who these characters are, what they're all about, then this point makes sense to me. Okay, let's give this paragraph a title. And I would call it Cheechak and Kenchel. You could even call it The Story of Cheechak and Kenchel. And I'm trying to put the American spelling on it. And main idea, let's squeeze that in down here. Indonesian folklore or Indonesian stories tell about two characters, and I'm not naming them here, but I am naming them. I'm telling you that there are two characters who constantly or who always argue. So I've told you that it's from Indonesia. I've told you that it's fiction with folklore. We've talked about the two characters, Chichok and Kanchel. They always argue. So we have covered these details. This is not the only way to diagram this passage. It is one way, and it's the way that I have always used myself. I still do this. If I have a very difficult passage that I can't understand, I will sit down with scrap paper, draw my fish diagram, and I start breaking it down, because that lets my brain understand all these little bitty details that are so important. Okay, I'm going to stop this video, and we have one more example. I'll be back with that one at the bottom of page 15.